Praise God, bro.
Hey, don't let these tears fool you. There's all dog around this mug. I'm good.
Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, and yes, I am the host of the State of the Saints podcast. Thank you so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. On this edition, we're going to be talking about the first day of padded practice for the Black and Gold. But of course, I want to say thank you to everybody that's checking out this video. Thank you to everyone who checks out the State of the Saints podcast consistently. I ask that you hit that like button if you enjoy the content. I ask that you subscribe to the channel. We're about 85 subscribers away from 10,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed yet, just go ahead and hit that subscription button so we can get to 10,000. Thank you all so much for your love and your support. But let's go ahead and talk about training camp, the first day of padded practice. And, you know, padded practice is always exciting, especially the first day of padded practice because, you know, guys have not played the game for months. You know, they're out there in shorts and jerseys and, you know, it doesn't feel like football, right? But when you put the pads on, you know, and guys are thumping around and you feel that impact, it kind of wakes you up and it makes you realize that football is indeed here. And, you know, the key word for the New Orleans Saints in 2023 is competition. Dennis Allen has set the tone by bringing in guys to compete at all positions. You know, nobody's job is safe. Nobody just has it in a bag unless you're Cam Jordan. You know, but, you know, this is what it's all about. It's about competing. The Saints are not only competing against one another. Of course, the heat continues to climb, you know, sweating. You know, guys are feeling exhausted, but once again, that what builds character. That's what builds, build during adverse times. And, you know, these guys are really out there giving it their all. You don't see guys taking reps off. You don't see guys out there phoning it in. Guys are really going at it, really trying to compete and really trying to win these positions. And one-on-one started on the first day of padded practice. It's always exciting seeing wide receivers go up against cornerbacks. You had a little bit of a shocker, man. Traquan Smith making plays over Laddie Daddy, Marshawn Lattimore, man. So Traquan Smith out there making plays against the absolute best, man. You know, you got A.T. Perry out there making athletic catches. You got Michael Thomas out there doing his thing. But I think the person that stood out to me was Paulson Adebo. Paulson Adebo, who is competing for the number 2 cornerback job against Alontae Taylor, really took a step forward. You have to say he kind of pushed himself ahead of Alontae Taylor today in the one-on-ones because he actually was going up more times than not against Michael Thomas. And Michael Thomas, we know, is an absolute beast. He's a bully. And cornerbacks look at Michael Thomas like it's going to be a long day. But Paulson Adebo made some plays, including a very athletic interception on Michael Thomas. So, you know, Paulson Adebo is doing the right things. He has the size. He has the determination. He's a smart player. I think the more Paulson Adebo plays in the league, the better he'll become. I think this is the year he may be able to put it together. He's always had the talent. He always had the skills. I just think that it just needed to be polished a little bit. And, you know, of course, there were some situations where, you know, he was a little bit more aggressive and, you know, it kind of garnered a flag. But you rather a guy be aggressive. Yeah, there it is. You rather a guy be aggressive than, you know, not be aggressive enough. So I have no problem with that. I think that this is a good move Paulson Adebo making those moves, doing what's necessary in order for him to elevate himself to that number 2 spot. Also, Brian Bursey. Brian Bursey, the rookie out of Clemson, a first-round draft pick for the New Orleans Saints. A big guy, over 300 pounds. He's much taller than what you'll see out of conventional defensive tackles, but, he's more athletic than you see most D tackles. And head coach Dennis Allen actually talked a little bit about Brian Bursey and the skill set that he possesses.
I'd have to go back and look at the tape to really evaluate how he was today, but I'd say overall I've been impressed with him in terms of his, explosiveness, his quick twitch. There's some suddenness inside, some pass rush ability inside that, I don't know that we've had. In terms of the way that we've had some great power rushers, but I don't know that we've had the suddenness, the burst, the twitch, some of those things that we have.
Brian Bursey is a guy who, I watched play at Clemson quite a bit, right? Me being in South Carolina, I watched my fair share of Clemson, right? And a lot of people talk about Clemson all the time around here. So, seeing him play, not only playing on the inside, but has the ability to play on the outside, the athleticism. He's a guy that I feel like it can really make some noise. Like, if he can get it together and he can actually generate a pass rush from the interior, he can be very, very dangerous. And I think that's what the Saints were looking at when they drafted him, and I think that was one of the main reasons why, they took him, because he is a guy who, with the right development, the right coaching, I think that he is in the right situation. He can be a star in the National Football League. He's had some injuries, in college, and I know that may have, kind of raised some red flags or even have a lot of Saints fans skeptical about him. But I'm telling you, this dude can be really, really good. I'm be honest, I was one of those individuals when the Saints, drafted him. I was kind of, on the fence about that. But the more I think about it and the more, you learn about Brian Bursey and you watch him on tape and you watch the motor. I mean, it is constantly running. He never gives up on plays. You start to like the guy. And I think that, he has a chance to be a star in the league. He had opportunity to take some first-team reps, and he spoke to the media a little bit about that, and also just the conversations with the defensive end, legendary defensive end, I should say, Cam Jordan.
Yeah, I wouldn't say too much yet. There's not, we're not heavy into like third and long and that kind of stuff where there'll probably be a lot more at that time. But, we're kind of just, it's a lot of quick game, run game, that kind of stuff right now. So just kind of hold your gap down right now. So
getting the opportunity to take first-team reps is a huge thing, and you want to take advantage of that. And Brian Bursey really stood out. Dennis Allen talked about him. He was excited about him, of course, and it's easy to do so. So hopefully the rookie can, really have an amazing season, maybe even be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. Hey, you never know. But also, we have competition going on special teams. Now, I know we don't really talk about special teams a lot. Special teams is one of those things where, it's the most important thing when things are going wrong, right? Last year when Will Lutz, a guy who is known for being clutch, a player that you can count on, who has made game-winning field goal after game-winning field goal, he struggled, right? So the New Orleans Saints, they bring in some competition. Today, Will Lutz went 8 for 8. He even kicked a 59-yard field goal from what I was told. So Will Lutz is embracing this. Will Lutz has always been a really good, solid kicker, one of the best when he's really on. But I just think that sometimes guys can become complacent, especially when they start signing contracts, and those contracts kind of entail that you are our guy. And, I just think it's just one of those situations where, he was dealing with some injuries. And then on top of that, you are the guy. So to actually have somebody out there to push you, and I just think that it helps him. It helps a guy like Will Lutz. And I don't think that, the other kicker is going to make this team. I think it's Will Lutz's job to lose. But it's an eye-opener for him to go out there and perform and do his thing. So I think that Will Lutz, this competition is actually helping him in a major way. The New Orleans Saints had an injury today. Stop me if you heard this before. ANDRUS PEAT. ANDRUS PEAT was injured today. He's dealing with a quad injury. This is unfortunate. Of course, we know that ANDRUS PEAT is notorious for not being healthy. Look, I take no pleasure in saying this about ANDRUS PEAT. I take no pleasure in saying this. But I really just think that it's time for the New Orleans Saints to cut ties with the guard. Not to say that ANDRUS PEAT doesn't have some level of talent. Not to say that ANDRUS PEAT isn't a solid offensive lineman. I'm not saying all that. All I'm saying is when a guy is spending more time in the tub than in the club, it is time to move on. And there was a reason why the New Orleans Saints decided to go out here and get a guy like Trey Turner, who, ironically, ended up getting hurt himself. Look, I understand that in football, injuries are going to happen. It's just a part of the game, right? It's like you can really just be standing, stationary and somebody can just roll over your ankle or just kind of run into you or something like that. I mean, injuries are going to happen. But ANDRUS PEAT stays hurt too much for the Saints to constantly give this guy contract after contract after contract after contract. Like, I'm not mad at the dude for getting money. Get money. I don't blame you. But I don't even blame him. I blame mostly the organization because you have an opportunity to go out here to possibly replace this guy, but instead you decide to try to make this thing work. How many times does this person have to show you who they are in order for you to know who they are? That's all I'm saying. ANDRUS PEAT is going to get hurt. I mentioned on the last episode, debt, taxes, and ANDRUS PEAT getting hurt. I mean, that's just what it is. They have to find stability on the offensive line. I don't care who your quarterback is. I don't care if you go out and get the second coming of Joe Montana, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees wrapped in one. If you do not have an offensive line that can protect that quarterback, the world will never know. Derek Carr needs to stand upright. This offensive line for the last 3 years have never really played together. It's always been if a guy comes in, the other guy is out. It's like they tagging in and out. They need to have stability on the offensive line. So don't know the severity of the injury. It's not one of those situations like Trey Turner where he's out for the season, but it's probably going to be one of those things where he's going to miss some time. So hopefully the Saints can figure it out on the offensive line and maybe, try to, get some stability there. That's all I'm asking for. I don't think I'm asking for too much. I don't think you're asking for too much. Maybe a little bit of stability on the offensive line to help your new quarterback be able to succeed, right? But let's go ahead and stay on the offensive side of football. Let's talk a little bit about James Washington. James Washington, of course, played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, had his best seasons there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He had, some time with the Dallas Cowboys. And he's decided to sign with the New Orleans Saints. And the media talked to him a little bit about him signing with the Saints. And how did that come about?
So it actually came out of nowhere. My agent, he was talking to the Giants for the longest. And Saints happened. And I guess it just kind of all worked out. Once I got here, I just felt like I fit in. I fit in here very well.
The best thing about this wide receiver room? It's something that the New Orleans Saints have not had in a long time. You have multiple guys that are capable of going over 100 yards consistently. And I say that because we know how the New Orleans Saints for years have been structured. It has always been, you have that number one guy who gets the majority of the targets. And then you have a bunch of role guys around them, right? They're probably the 50, the 60-yard per game type guys. But the New Orleans Saints have guys like Michael Thomas, who is capable of going over 100 yards. Chris Olave, who's capable of going over 100 yards. You got Brian Edwards out there. He can make some plays, maybe get close to 100 yards. And, you got James Washington, who has done that, right? He has been the leading receiver of a team. So the New Orleans Saints, this is a good thing because we have seen the injuries happen at the wide receiver position. Last year was Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry, the two guys that were supposed to be your 1 and 1A, right? But now the New Orleans Saints have a situation if something was to happen to Mike T and Chris Olave, you still have some guys that are capable of filling that role and doing a really productive job doing it. You know, James Washington, you know, he's dealt with some injuries, which that's what I feel has kind of, you know, stunned his growth. Because when he was in Pittsburgh, I mean, he was pretty doggone good. And he was on a trajectory, but those injuries start to occur, and all of a sudden, you know, the Pittsburgh Steelers decide to cut ties. But the thing about it is he can be a solid guy. And then also, for those that may not be the biggest Tre'Quan Smith fan, Jerry, but yeah, so, you know, he can be that guy, right? I mean, we know Tre'Quan Smith is a good blocking wide receiver. So is James Washington. James Washington is a really good blocking wide receiver, but he's also a wide receiver that is capable of giving you some plays as well. He's not just a guy that just can block, right? He's a guy that can give you some high production at that position. And who knows? I mean, it's a pretty deep room right now, and guys are really fighting. Don't know if James Washington going to make the team, but still, you know, to have him in camp, in a facility, just tells you everything that you need to know about the New Orleans Saints and where their mind is. Once again, the word is competition, you know, and that's what Dennis Allen wants. But I want to take this opportunity to thank the sponsor of the State of the Saints podcast. We back at it again. Want to thank the fine folks at manscaped.com. Manscaped.com, the official sponsor of the State of the Saints podcast. We're here with a sponsor for your bouncing bundle of joy. And no, we're not talking about your baby. We're talking about baby makers. Manscaped is the official sponsor of the State of the Saints podcast. And also, right now, if you use the promo code SOTS, you will get 20% off of your purchase. All you have to do is use the promo code SOTS at manscaped.com. You will get 20% off of your purchase. Well, once again, thank the fine folks at manscaped.com for being an official sponsor of the State of the Saints podcast. But let's talk a little bit more. Let's talk about the defensive side of the football once again. You got some guys that are competing, but one thing that a lot of fans may not be paying attention to is the New Orleans Saints having a little bit of a restructure when it comes to the defensive line. Like I mentioned, Brian Bursey, but you also got to think about, you know, some of the guys that are, you know, just getting here. You know, Brian Bursey is one of the guys that just got here. Of course, I just mentioned Isaiah Foskey is another guy. You know, I mean, Carl Granderson, he's been here, but he's still young. I mean, you got Cullen Sanders, you know, who's on a line. I mean, these guys are still young. This is a group that is young, and they're learning about one another. And I think that it was time to kind of revamp some things up. You know, like it was time to change some things up, I should say. It was time for the Saints to get a little bit faster. I think that, you know, the Saints just started really, really slow on the defensive side of the football. It was always really, really slow. It took weeks for anybody to kind of generate any type of pass rush. And I think that it's been an issue. And I think that the league is changing. You know, some people think that, you know, I'm tripping when I say these things, but it's just the truth. You don't really see huge 280, 290-pound guys just dominating on the defensive line anymore like the Reggie Whites back in the day. It's a new league with the hybrid guys, the smaller guys, the 260, 270 guys that are out here rushing the quarterback. And guys like Isaiah Foskey and Carl Granderson are the new wave. And you got to have some level of speed. You know, it's good that you have some guys that, you know, like Cam Jordan, that have all these different pass rushing moves. But, you know, you need somebody like Cam Jordan, too, that can be able to control the edge. You need an athletic defensive end to be able to control the edge. And I think that sometimes that where the Saints struggled, you know, and also with some of these running quarterbacks as well. If you don't have that athletic defensive end to be able to chase down some of these athletic quarterbacks in the modern day NFL, then you're going to find yourself losing a lot of football games. So having a young, athletic defensive line is key for the New Orleans Saints. A lot of new faces, a lot of guys that are competing for starting jobs on the defensive line. A lot of guys are trying to learn how to play together, the guys that they signed. It should be an amazing training camp. But today, the New Orleans Saints put on a pass for the first time. Really looking forward to seeing how camp is going to transpire, who is going to elevate themselves to a starting position. What shocking player may not even be on this team that we may not even think, even think about, right? I mean, it's crazy how training camp is going to turn out for some of these players on the New Orleans Saints. But I want to hear from you. What do you all think about the first day of padded practice? What do you think about Brian Bursey? What do you think about the chances of Paulson Adebo being that number 2 cornerback? Michael Thomas coming back. What do you think about that? Comment down below, like and share this video. This has been the State of the Saints podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com, search The State of the Saints podcast. We got previous episodes available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor FM. And of course, you can always hit your boy up on social media on Twitter at TJAY Jones 8. Till next time, all I got to say is, who dat?